Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good whatever time it is where you are. Welcome back to LSAT Games. Let's do some LSAT Games, right? Am I recording everywhere? I think so. I need to start doing some ASMR. I feel like my forehead's a little shiny, but I guess that's just the way it goes sometimes. Hey. Oh, that's hot. I need it. I got a cold. Masks go off, and all of a sudden I got a cold. Prep Test 5, which I'm not going to check, I am confident comes from June 1992. I am going to check. Prep Test 5. Why do I check? June 1992. Very good. We've got our games section, section 2 here. As always, I'm going to go from beginning to end. What you should do, of course, is make sure you go from easiest to most difficult. I don't really know what to expect. The questions seem a little long here, which intimidates me. And we've got 6 of them, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If it turns out to be an easy game, we want an easy game to have 6 questions. I don't know. Let's jump into it. So I'm looking at the setup here. John receives 1 grade for each of the following 6 courses: economics, geology, history, Italian, physics, and Russian. Why would he take Italian and Russian? From highest to lowest, the possible grades are A, B, C, D, and E. Why would they do that? E is not failing. There's no E. It's F. Anyway, E is the only failing grade. 2-letter grades are consecutive if and only if they are adjacent in the alphabet. So A and B are consecutive, B and C are consecutive, but A and C would not be consecutive, and so on. John's grades in geology and physics are consecutive. Ooh, interesting. So I think this is basically an order game with this consecutive idea. They're going to be giving us a lot of block clues. Although actually, it's not quite right to say it's an order game. Should I do it like a grouping game? I think you could set this up as a grouping game. I'm going to try what I think is kind of a weird setup. So the setup in my head is just to let E, G, H, I, P, and R, so the classes, be our groups across the top of the diagram, and then to place grades in those groups. But what I'm thinking is with a clue like John's grades in geology and physics are consecutive, this first clue, well, geology and physics aren't going to be next to each other in my diagram, and so I would have to be like constantly looking back and forth to make sure, do I have consecutive grades for these 2 classes, A and B, or B and A, or whatever order it might be in. I mean, it would be one thing if they were like the same grade. He gets the same grade in geology and physics, and then it's not terribly difficult just to remember, if he gets a B in geology, also put that in physics. But the fact that if he gets a B in geology, it could be either an A or a C in physics, tells me that setup is probably a little bit weird. So I think I'm going to try to do an order setup, but instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're just going to do A, B, C, D, E. And so whether you want to call this an order game or a grouping game where those grades are our groups, I don't think makes that big of a difference. I think that's mostly semantics. And then with this setup in mind, our elements in that case would be the classes themselves, which I think makes a little bit better sense. E, G, H, I, P, and R. Now, one thing I will say as far as setting this up as an order game is obviously the number of elements does not match the grades themselves. This is not a 1-to-1 order game. For that matter, I don't even know if I have to use everything. Maybe he gets no D's and E's, right? Maybe he only gets A's, B's, and C's. And so in that way, it's more like a grouping game where I don't know the sizes of the groups. So a little bit of a weird hybrid here, at least it seems that way so far. Let's go ahead and symbolize the clues, though. I'm happy with that setup. John's grades in geology and physics are consecutive. So basically, this is kind of like a G-P block where we don't necessarily know the order. So it could be P and then G, or it could be G and then P. His grades in Italian and Russian are consecutive, so same exact kind of block, I, R, but again, we don't necessarily know the order. He receives a higher grade in economics than in history. Yeah, I'm happy with setting this up as a grouping game. So for us, higher grades are to the left, and so what we're saying here is essentially E ... H. Economics has to come before history. And then he receives a higher grade in geology than physics. Okay, that's interesting because that actually, I mean, we can set that up as a G ... P, But right away, our deduction is going to be, this is actually a GP block, right? We know G and P have to be consecutive. And since G now has to be a higher grade than P, let's just make sure we read that correctly. He receives a higher grade in geology than physics. Yeah, we get a little bit of an order deduction there. Geology is higher than physics. Let's try and make order style deductions. This means that P, he can't possibly get an A, has to get a higher grade in geology. Geology can't be E. One thing I will want to keep in mind here, though, because again, I don't know if he has to fail anything. If C is where his latest grades are, if the lowest grades he get is a C, then G would not be in C, right? So geology basically can't be his lowest grade. In the same way, we can say history can't be an A, economics can't be an E, or whatever the lowest grade happens to be. Same thing up here. It doesn't necessarily have to be the case that H and P are A's. Maybe he gets no A's at all. Or sorry, it doesn't have to be the case that H and P can't be A. Maybe H and P can't be B if his highest grades are B's. And then I and R, because they're reversible, there's not much we can say about them right now. I just have to make sure I have enough space for them once I place them. So not a ton of deductions here. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. No kind of pick a clue style question where I can eliminate based on the clues, but I do start right away with a specific question. Number 1, if John receives the same grade in economics as Italian, so E equals I, MC squared, and if he fails Russian, which of the following must be true? Okay, so one thing I guess I forgot to note on my diagram, E is the only failing grade. So maybe I want like a special little mark here. E is failing. So on this one, telling us that he fails Russian is the same as telling us that he got an E. Oh, wait. This is even weirder. Why on earth did they make E the failing grade when there's a class that starts with E, economics? That is so strange. Okay, so I just want to be really careful to not confuse economics with the failing grade E. I would almost just want to set up in my diagram A, B, C, D, F, like you would expect. I guess the reason they had to do this was because of their consecutive clue having to do with alphabetical order. But anyway, you don't want to change this to F because, of course, there are lots of answers that involve a grade of E, and so that'll just end up being confusing. I guess it's going to be confusing no matter what, but we just need to remember economics E is different from grade E. So we don't mean that he gets an E in Italian. We mean that whatever he gets in Italian, he also gets in economics. Maybe I'll add a little C there. I'll just do economic every time, EC. So what can we figure out here? If economics and Italian are the same grades, well, if Russian is the only class he fails, then all of a sudden that means the latest either of H and P can be is D. And so now we can kind of move these further to the left like I was talking about. Now economics can't be a D, geology can't be a D. But then after that, I'm not really seeing what we can come up with in terms of deductions. There are 3 places we could put this kind of ECI group. It doesn't seem worth it to me to try to put the ECI group into those places. Oh, wait, I see it now. There is this clue about Italian and Russian being consecutive, right? So if he fails Russian, well, wait, but then this is not going to work. That would mean that he has to get a D in Italian. But if he gets the same grade in economics and Italian, that means that economics would have to go there. But it's supposed to be followed by H. Geology and physics are consecutive. Italian and Russian are consecutive. Fails Russian. He receives a higher grade in economics than in history. Oh, I don't know why I read this. For some reason, I read number 1 as saying he only fails Russian. But it doesn't say that. It just says he fails Russian. So, yeah, I don't know why I said that the ECG thing ends up moving up. That's not true. Instead, what ends up happening here is Italian has to be D, which means for the purposes of this question, economics is also a D, but economics always comes before history, so that has to be an E, so he's also failing history. And then G before P looks like it could happen, G before P, or it could be G before P. And how many classes do I have? Have I missed any? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I think that's it. So for a must be true, I'm obviously expecting this to involve Italian, Russian, economics, or history. His geology grade is a B. Not necessarily. That's not a must be true. History grade is a D. No, his history grade is an E. C is your best choice here. Okay, glad I've got that in my head now. I don't want to read anything in as, if he fails Russian, he only fails Russian. No reason to think that. Number 2, it's hot. It's burning my lips. If John passes all his courses and receives a higher grade in geology than in either language. So for this one, G is before I, G is before R, and nothing ends up failing, right? There is going to be no E. Which of the following must be true? Well, right now, G has to be pretty early because it has to be before I, R, and P. I and R have to take up at least 2 spots because they're consecutive. Of course, we know GP is a block, but I think that means, even if we put something like I and R as late as we could go, the earliest the GP block could appear would be, or I guess the latest the GP block could appear would be something like a B and a C. Of course, it doesn't have to be that way. We could put G first. P would go second in that case. I guess the only thing we could say is G can't be a C, right? Because it has to be before I. So G has to be either A or B. P in that case would be either B or C following G. But then the IR block could move around. So it's possible to have IR as a B and a C, or IR, don't love this diagram, it's getting messy, as a C and a D. Economics and history look like they can kind of go wherever we need. This is a must be true. He receives exactly 1A. It doesn't seem to be right, because couldn't economics be an A? So he could get 2 A's. He receives exactly 1B. I don't think so, because it looks like P and I could both be B's. He receives exactly 2 B's. Again, I don't think so, because you could imagine a scenario where economics is an A and history is a D or something. So that does not seem to be a must be true. He receives at least 1 B and at least 1 C. Now that's interesting. He has to get at least 1 B because either G or P are going to be there. Does he have to get a C though? Yes, because then the IR block comes into play. Again, it could be I and then RBC or I and then RCD, but either way, something is C. So yes, D is the best choice there. All right, more specific questions. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of room on this one, so we're kind of running short, and we're only on question number 3. If John receives a higher grade in physics than in economics, so P.Ec, and receives a higher grade in economics than either language, so I and R. This is almost like a range question. Which of the following allows all 6 of his grades to be determined? Well, we already know the GP block, and so you can think of it right now as we have at least 3 slots filled in. For that matter, economics is also before history. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What am I missing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not. I just miscounted. So that's everything. So the question is, what else would they have to tell us such that we could place all of these exactly? If his grade in history is a D, I don't think it's going to have anything to do with H, I, or R, because they can kind of move around wherever we want. Although I will say, if they said, oh, never mind, maybe, because R is also in a different place from I, right? So actually, H is kind of the only, in a sense, the only unknown element. We know it has to be G, P, Ec, I, R. So yeah, if we know where history goes, we're done. So actually, 3 is going to be A. Okay. Another specific question, number 4. If John receives a higher grade in physics than in economics and receives a higher grade in history than in Italian, so P.Ec, H.I, which again, wait. I think I messed up. Remember, we don't know what order I and R go in, do we? Yeah, I think maybe we messed up on 3. So this is where we have to remember it's reversible. right? Could be I and then R, but it could be R and then I. They just can't go in the same place. So just because history is a D, I could still flip around R and I. They just have to come after economics. Okay, so actually I don't think 3 is A. If we know Italian is a D, again, the problem is we don't know where history goes in that case. It could be D or E. If history and Italian are identical, even then it could be that they're together as a D or that they're together as an E, and they could flip-flop with R. So I don't think it's any of A, B, or C. His grades in history and Russian are identical. No, that seems like it could still flip-flop. Ah, his grade in history is higher than his grade in Russian. Yeah, that's got to be the one. History has to come after economics, and so D is the earliest it could be. And if it's higher than Russian, Russian would have to be E, and then we would know where Italian goes, because once Russian is E, Italian is just as be consecutive with it. The only spot available is a D, and so number 3 is actually E. I'm glad we caught that. Okay, but back to this question. If he gets a higher grade in physics than in economics, and receives a higher grade in history than Italian, and so again, that's got the IR block. Exactly how many of his grades can be determined? So I'm going to need some other space. A, B, C, D, E. Maybe jot it down up here. What can we say for sure? Physics, of course, is connected to G, and then P blocked off. H is connected to economics, so that actually links these. So right now, again, we have kind of a range. G, P, economics, H, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the IR, swingamajiggy. And there are only 5 slots, so this has to be G, P, E, C, H. Wait, that's a problem. IR can't go together. What am I missing? Economics is always before history. In this particular case, history is higher than Italian. Oh, but R could go at the same spot that history is. In fact, I think that's what has to happen, because that's the only way to fit everything and keep the IR consecutive grouping going. Yeah, so we can figure out all 6 subjects, right? That's 6 of them. All right, 2 more questions here. Assume that John's grade in physics is higher than his grade in Italian and consecutive with it. So basically G, P, I, and his grades in Russian and physics differ, so it can't be P in the same slot as R. It has to be I followed by R. So that's 4 slots right there. Which of the following must be true? In our chart, which again we're kind of running out of room for, it could be G, P, I, R, and then economics and history just have to go kind of somewhere. Or I and R have to be consecutive. Do P and I have to be consecutive? Yes. His grade in physics is higher than his grade in Italian and consecutive with it, according to this question. So the only other possibility is that we push that block 1 space down, G, P, I, R. And again, economics and history just kind of go somewhere in the midst of this. So what must be true? He gets both an A and a B. Does not look like he has to get an A, and so it's not going to be A. Gets both an A and a C. Again, he does not have to get an A. For that matter, it does not look like he has to get an E. So D and E are out, but he has to get both a B and a D. Yes, no matter what, he has to get a B and a D. So that is C. Gosh, this is a confusing game. Number 6. Wow, every single one of these turned out to be a specific question. Assume that John receives a lower grade in economics than physics. So that's going to be G, P, EC, H. Wait, were those consecutive? Or was it just higher? Yeah, they're not necessarily consecutive. He must have failed at least one course if which one of the following is also true. So right now, how are I and R involved in this? They're not necessarily, right? It could be A, B, C, D, E. Could be G, P, E, C, H. And then the only way we know he has to fail something is if we know one of I or R have to come after history. So he receives a lower grade in Italian than in economics? No, because that could be something like he gets the same grade in Russian and economics, and Italian is just a D, so that's not failing. He receives a lower grade in Italian than physics? Definitely not. He receives a lower grade in physics than Italian? Definitely not. He receives a lower grade in Russian than in economics. I mean, again, all that means is that Russian would have to be a D, but Italian and economics could be the same there. Oh, there it is. He receives a lower grade in Russian than in history. So yeah, Russian would be E. Italian would be D in that case. And so there's your answer. All right, fun game. C, D, E, E, C, E. C, D, E, E, C, E. We did it. We got them all right. It's always nice. What do I think about this game? I don't think this is going to be the easiest game in the section. If it is, this is kind of a tough section, which again is not actually a bad thing. It's to your advantage because you're the one here watching YouTube videos about LSAT games. But I'm presuming there's going to be an easier one. This feels more like a 2 or a 3 game that you would want to do second or third. Again, it is ultimately an ordering game. Ordering games, typically pretty easy. The fact that we can reuse elements within a certain slot makes it difficult, like multiple grades, multiple subjects can be in the same grade, ends up making this one a little difficult. The fact that we don't know that much about the order, I mean, I guess the IR block was really the only thing in the end that we didn't know the order of for sure, but just more uncertainty than is typical for your easiest order game makes me think this is probably not the easiest game in this section. But we persisted, right? We prevailed. As you know, I'm working through all 300-ish games, as you know. I'm working through all 300-ish games of the various LSAT prep tests, the published tests. If there's a game you'd like me to move earlier in the order, let me know. I'm happy to do it. I'm going in order, and I'm now in prep test 5, so still relatively early in this process. Yeah, comment down below. Let me know what you want me to look at, and otherwise, I'll see you around.